What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, I think it's time we ask the question, especially with so much going on with the Middle East. And the question is, are one of the wealthiest groups considered on the planet the Saudis in a cash crunch? Recently, Saudi Arabia has been making some really strong moves in what we would say is unorthodox ways, especially with the whole Islamic NATO formation with them, Pakistan, and Turkey. Never before have Saudi Arabia been so openly aggressive in a militaristic manner. As I said, they usually like to be a little bit more behind the scenes, funding funding different groups and different interests. But Saudi Arabia, based on Vision 2030, which is a 2016 release from the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, about how they wanted to move Saudi Arabia into the future. And by moving Saudi Arabia in the future, they want to take the PIF or the Public Investment Fund, Saudi's Public Investment Fund, and invest in all these sectors of the economy to diversify away from being so overly reliant on oil, because it's all intents and purposes, Saudi Arabia is a banana republic structurally. They're a country, it's really not that populated. It is a desert. It's a massive country, primarily composed of two cities, Riyadh and Jeddah, and it's full of oil. And it has a bunch of oil on its eastern coast. Now, Saudi Arabia has been investing in everything. You can name it from soccer, wrestling, golf, Pokemon. They've been throwing money everywhere. And a part of that 2016 or Vision 2030 released in 2016 was a bunch of mega projects of how they was going to completely change the scale of Saudi Arabia, change the face of Saudi Arabia. Some of these projects, such as Nome, which is more like an enclave, like a region that they were going to build. These projects are fantastically giga projects, as I once read. Like, these are not just mega projects; they're giga projects. No one was going to basically section off a piece of the country, and that's going to put a line, a physical line, and within that line, it was going to be a city, and the city was going to be over 100 miles long and over 500 meters tall, and it was going to be able to house 9 million people, right? Oh, and I'm not even talking about the glass facade exterior that was supposed to exist along this corridor of the line. They were developing Trojena there as a winter capital for tourism. They're heavily invested in that. They were going to build the cube, a 400 meter by 400 meter giant cube with a 300-meter tall option where people can go out. It was a terrace that people can go out and have a beautiful view on with the dome. By the way, I don't want to forget the dome. Like, these are awesome projects that the Saudis had lined up, and most recently, a lot of these projects has been postponed. And don't get me wrong, these are just the projects like we've been talking about that's been postponed. And it's only because they have a whole bunch, such as the Dirio Culture Center, which or the cultural zone that they're building, which is going to be $60 billion investment, or the the Qadiyah tourist zone that they're going to invest in. So they have all these things in the queue, and recently some of these things have started to fall over. And coincidentally, this aligns with them signing these defense agreement. The Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, who has a it is a rich history, AD history. This was the home of Muhammad, and the Arabs and Islam conquered from this base. But and this is the home of Mecca, the cultural center, the religious center of the Islamic religion. But for the most of history in this part of the world, when it was surrounded by thriving civilizations, to the east they had Babylon, Sumer, the Persian empires. Uh, you had the to the north you had your Phoenicians, the Assyrians. To the west, it was Egypt, the ancient Egyptian. For most of history, this part of the region was kind of desolate. And the Arabic people that inhabited it these were not sedentary people, these were nomadic people. And they had one of the greatest booms of society when they discovered oil in this region. And not just oil, lots and lots and lots of oil. Like these guys, it made this region filthy rich. And for most of history, and in the modern history, Saudi Arabia is considered to have anywhere from a third to a quarter of global oil reserve. They kind of dictated the oil market. What they said go, especially from their seat in OPEC, their oil cartel, and this gave them an enormous influence. And it's so interesting. Me being coming of age around 9/11, and back then Saudi Arabia was seen as this hermit kingdom, sort of. They're isolated, they're highly conservative, and now you're seeing all of these actions to try to be open, to open up the borders, to bring in people, to bring in money, to bring in investors, to bring in people. You're seeing all of these things. So Saudi Arabia has really turned a new leaf, so to speak, but they're also feeling the pinch. Now, this Crown Prince, I don't know him, but I've heard of some of his work. He's not a guy to play around with, and I can imagine a lot of people in the room don't like telling him no. And some of these projects, they sound completely unrealistic, fantastical giga projects. So I can understand, the Crown Prince said, "I want a 100-mile long city made out of glass." A lot of people say, "Okay, boss, we can do it," especially when the oil prices are right. One thing that we notice, you can take a note of all these projects, whether they're talking about stopping building a cube, postponing the line, the line is about done, Nome is about done, the Asia Winter Games that they were going to hold in Trojena, that's done in 2029 or inevitably postponed. All these announcements happened in January 2026. What happened in early January 2026? The United States pretty much annexed Venezuela, the world's largest oil reserve. Oil prices are roughly around a low $60 per barrel. Usually the comfortable range, you're looking at about 70, 80. Once you start getting 90, 100, good times. But what the United States doing, one, it's oil everywhere. It's oil everywhere. We can say that. But what the United States have done, it has taken one of the most backwards market, and it's going to invest billions and billions of dollars to get that oil online. And that's going to create a lot of competition. And don't let Russia get back in the mix and start being able to trade again. So what was seen maybe in the 70s as the greatest resource of all time, you really have a situation where Saudi Arabia is scrambling to try to diversify, do something, provide a livelihood for the tens and tens of millions of people that live within inside this country. But they've never been able to get away from the oil. No matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, they haven't been able to get away from the oil. And these fantastical mega projects, giga projects, I don't see how they was doing it. I can see it's wishful thinking. I can see you have so much money. You can feel like you can do anything, but what happened when the price goes to 60? And what happened with the United States? The control of those levers are no longer yours. And the United States, with a turn of a spigot, can flood the market with oil and drown out the price, or it can close off the market from oil and drive up the price. So this is going to be interesting watching Saudi leadership navigate this, because right now they really feel like a trapped animal, and they feel like they're making a lot of volatile, aggressive moves, from making these drastic decisions to have all of these eccentric, out of this world, futuristic mega projects, giga projects, to join in all of these one for all for one defense pacts. And one of the most hot regions, hot as in hostile regions of the world, Middle East and South Asia. So it's really interesting. Would love to hear if you have an insight, comment below, like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. And until next time, take care. Bantu up.